Welcome to another episode of the Incident Commander series. On today's show, we're going to explore the role of an incident commander with another special guest, Brian Yonek, currently Consulting Director of Incident Recovery Operations at Palo Alto Unit 42. Brian has many years of incident commander experience under his belt, and in fact, Brian and I worked together several incidents despite the fact that we were working with a 9-hour time zone difference with each other, which made us meet at the craziest times of mornings, afternoons, nights, weekends, and where we probably both forgot in which time zone we were actually in. Welcome to the show, Brian, and it's good to see you again.
Thanks, Kuhn. I'm really glad to be here, and it's really good to see you. And the time zone thing's right. It's like late at night my time, early in your morning right now.
It is. How do you see the incident commander role?
So to me, it means, and this is my take, it means taking care of people. Um, it means guiding them through, helping them through the process, helping them to get back to where they should be. And Kuhn, we see a lot of times, right, when we come into these incidents, people are just lost, right? They don't know where to go. If you would liken it to an analogy, like a hiker lost in the woods, you just come up on them and are able to guide them through and get them to where they need to go. That's how I see it. More technically, I walk them through the life cycle of an incident, mostly focusing on things like containment, remediation, recovery, and eviction. Obviously, there's some analysis that I do, but I walk them through all those phases and make sure I give them the best guidance I can and just really care for them and help get them through things.
What is the hardest part?
So it's funny. My take is this, Kuhn. I've been doing incident command for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. I've done hundreds of incidents, and I have not ever seen an incident that's the same. So the hardest part is that no matter what I think I'm ready for, I show up to the client and it's completely different and nothing is what I thought it was. So being able to be flexible when the pressure is on is important, right? So being able to be organic. Those slide decks that we put together and we think we're going to show people how the flow is going to work and how everything's going to happen, almost completely useless unless you just use it to fill your time in between incidents. Everything is just so dynamic. So I would say to you, that's probably one of the hardest parts. And then trying to convey to the client that you know what's going on is difficult because you're ready, right? You're ready with the process and you're ready with the tools, but it's brand new to you. What's happening, their environment, the threat actor, even if sometimes if it's the same threat actor, stuff fires off differently and it's always new.
What is your signature?
So I like to use humor, right? I like to take this terrible situation and say something funny, not completely off the cuff. And normally, what I do, and I'll just give it to you here, and whoever's listening, whoever sees this, feel free to use it if you like. Just know I said it first. I'll go in and I'll tell the client, hey, I'm here for you. If you need anything, call me anytime. If you're having an anxiety attack, call me. If you want to talk about the incident, call me. And if you want to talk about your mismatched sock collection, call me. I don't care. I'm here for you. And what I use is I use that humor to help support the, hey, it doesn't matter what's going on. If you need a voice, if you need a friend in the middle of the night, I don't care. Call me. It's happened plenty of times. Not everybody takes me up on it, but it's nothing for me to get up at 2:30 in the morning, answer the phone, and say, "Hey, give me 5 minutes so I don't wake my wife up, and I'll call you right back." So that's how I come into it. Everybody's tense. Nobody knows what's going on. So I come in with a silly little joke just to try to lighten the temperature up.
External stakeholder challenges.
And honestly, like third-party vendors, Kuhn, that's the bread and butter of incident command, right? We take all these external pieces and we manage them so clients don't have to. You named a lot of them as you were going through everything, right? We deal with legal, we deal with inside counsel, we deal with outside counsel, we deal with insurance, we deal with recovery partners, we take all of those people and bring them together
Mhm.
how they need to come together. So you asked a great question. How do I deal with those? Literally in the first meeting, I ask legal outside counsel what meetings they want to be on. And I typically schedule three types of meetings, right? I schedule operational meeting
Mhm.
where we just talk about um, the technical stuff, the technical side of everything. I do an
Mhm.
admin meeting
Mhm.
where we talk to CEOs, executives and stuff in the company to let them know where things are going. And then I also do a admin meeting at the very end. So it's three meetings a day typically at the beginning. And that admin meeting is where I talk to the insurance, outside counsel, inside counsel, third party, or not third party vendor, excuse me, the recovery partner, and
Mhm.
we organize things. So at the very beginning, I start to get that schedule laid out so I
Mhm.
know how to communicate with those people. One of the things that I would say that those kinds of groups could learn, and a lot of them do, right? So I'm not going to act like they don't know this and it doesn't happen all the time, but being able to be ready to coordinate and know how the chain works, right? Who do you go to get an answer? When do the recovery partners talk to legal? When does legal talk to the insurance company? When do I talk to anyone? Things like that. Planning that out and just getting it right on the table in the open and exposed is the key to getting that solved.
Yeah, very often in the exercises I do with some of my customers is basically explaining to them, or even in the incident commander training that I provide, is training them on understanding your stakeholders, but making sure that there's this two-way communication model that is formally established before you engage basically with them, right? So it's not only knowing about I have a vendor for recovery, but you need to understand basically upfront, ideally, what does that vendor expect out of me? If I have a phone, for example, where I need mobile forensics to be done, how do they want that package? What information do they need upfront? And then on the other hand, the vendor themselves also need to let the core team know about, these are the things that I'm expecting, so that you really have this two-way relationship that can be established upfront, and instead of finding things out during a major incident, which is a lot more stressful and creates, conflict and stress and sometimes disappointment as well, from a vendor expectation perspective. But if you have set all of these things up front with, using templates, using, standard approaches, I think it can really help circumvent some of these challenges that you might have, and not just relying on we've got a contract, finding out what is their SLA. Are they contactable 24 by 7? How quickly do they usually respond? We were talking off mic about one of these vendors on, them waiting for you to come online and actually put something in the chat. Other vendors might be setting out expectations or services where, you can't necessarily have that direct, let's say, reaction from the other side.
Yeah, Kuna, I would go so far as to say this. The first phase of the incident life cycle is prepare, right? So I would say if you have an insurance company and you get outside counsel, you should call as a company, right? As a client, you should call those people and find out what they need as well.
Mhm.
So what's going to happen if an incident kicks off. What do the attorneys need? What will they do? Learn your process from them, and build those relationships. So when something bad does happen, you know who you're talking to and you know what
Mhm.
to expect when you get on the phone with them.
What about stress management?
That's an awesome question, and that varies depending where you are. Now, as an incident commander, my life is unique because I go from one crisis to another crisis to another crisis with maybe a few weeks in between. So, handling my stress means compartmentalizing it while it's happening and then finding a way to vent. And in my case, maybe that's fishing or something outdoors
Mhm.
or family time. And I know those are generic cliche answers, but you just have to find your way to
Mhm.
let loose. Now, dealing with a client's stress is a lot different than dealing with my own stress.
Mhm.
Some of these people have spent their entire careers building these networks that just went up in a matter of seconds and have been fully encrypted. So, what I do to help deal with stress with the clients is I focus on small wins. If I can show them a positive course and a positive way forward, no matter how small it is, even if it's just one task out of the day that's been horrible, and I can show them a win, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what I focus on with the client because their incident is going to end. Yes, I'm going to go on to another incident, but their incident's going to end in a few weeks, maybe a month. Their stuff's going to go away. They're going to have a brand new shiny network, hopefully with more documentation than they've ever had and a better understanding of how to secure it. So I focus on those things. Small wins are the key when deconflicting and taking stress off of your clients.
So obviously, you're, very often in your incident commander role as a one-man show, which brings you sometimes to your own personal human limits. And very often, what we advocate is having a backup, having resiliency. Because obviously you will, or have you actually hit your own human limits and needed to call on a peer in the industry to kind of take over for a while so that you could take some rest and re-energize for the next 12 24 hours once you've actually done the first 24 72 hours at the beginning of the crisis.
For the health and benefit of everybody who's going to watch this now and in the future, I'd like to say, oh, yeah, I call people all the time for help. And I know that that's the right answer. But I'm kind of a type A personality. Once I start something, I've got to see it through to the end. Um, so I'm very focused on what I do. Uh, if I had to ask for help, I know that there are people to ask for help. I know who to ask for help. I have had to turn over some incidents only because you can only handle so many. So I
Mhm.
would start one and have to hand it off to another incident commander that I work with. But I tend to be because I care about the people. Really, I mean, I don't want to bail in the middle of an incident and give them to someone else. So I want to be there. But I want to say, message wise, if you are in a situation and you aren't built like me and you can't do it for more than a couple days at a time, there's no shame in handing it off to someone or asking someone to help bear the burden with you. As you and I were just talking about a second ago off camera about, taking notes, having someone do that little bit for you or having someone help manage the project for you can be a huge help. So I would encourage anybody that is watching this to not be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, and I guess the limit threshold will be different for every single individual that works as an incident commander. But like I do think that it's important as a person, as an individual, to recognize where your own personal limits are, and to recognize at that point that as you mentioned, you might need to hand off. Even if it's just to go on holidays, sometimes you finish an engagement, maybe the last evening before you take some leave, or you take a rest, and then you need to hand over. But it's important to recognize that there are limits for every single one of us, and so being aware about the limits and taking care of yourself, I think, is one of the strongest tips I would give to people that aspire to become an incident commander.
Yeah, Kuhn, I would recommend that you really focus on recognizing your signs, right? When are you reaching your limit? What are those signs? Maybe
Mhm.
that's you confusing multiple incidents or finding yourself in a brain fog where you don't remember your client's name or things like that. Be aware of what your stressors are or what
Mhm.
your indicators of stress are and be ready to take action on those and don't be ashamed of it.
No, and sometimes taking a step back is the right thing to do, right? So if you are, for example, stuck in your thought process, sometimes taking a break really allows you to take that different perspective when you actually come back and look at things with a fresh mindset, and see, because there's not one way of tackling a problem. There's usually multiple methodologies, multiple ways to solve one single problem. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of the incident commander role and incident response overall. It very often comes down to the "it depends" question, right? Which is hard. What about cultural differences in the ecosystem?
So Kun, I'm developing a theme here. When I learn that I'm working with someone from another country, And it doesn't matter what I think I know about the country. I do a lot of research on that culture, right? And particularly like Arabic culture. I've done just in Germany, German culture, trying to figure out how they want to be communicated to, and what I can do to make sure that I don't offend anyone. Because good gracious, you know how that stuff goes. If you say one wrong thing, you could alienate someone. So I use AI. I go in, I say, "Hey, AI, I'm about to do business with a Japanese client. What are some
Mhm.
things I need to keep in mind?" And I use that to try to do map out my communication and how I'm going to drive meetings. And I rely on that information, and that's how I get through that divide. Am I good at it? I don't know. I've never been yelled at by anyone for what I've done or what I tried, and I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? If you're trying, people see that. And in reality, even though there are tons of different cultures and tons of different things going on, if you show up and you care about someone and you're just trying to do the best for them, people don't usually get mad.
That's true. And talking about that, especially the topic of blaming and shaming, right? We very often say, "Don't put blaming into the game at any point in time as an incident commander." But the aspect of shame is something that is really strong in some of the cultures. And have you can you give me an example of how you circumvented that besides using AI? So basically, your human approach to some of these difficult problems that you might be facing.
Yeah, so when I'm finding people trying to shame, and I mean that's not even necessarily just tied to a culture outside of the U.S. or outside of the UK.
Mm.
It just happens. So what I try to do is redirect the conversation to the facts. There's nobody to blame, especially if you have a 10-year-old network and things were just a hot mess from the beginning. I try to point out, obviously, a lot more tactful than I just did, how things were and why these things led up to it. And some things just happen, right? So those things are easy to explain away. Like if you consider the new CLOP uh, e-business suite with Oracle, right? It just happened. It was a 0 day. There was no one to blame. There was nothing you can do.
Mm.
So some of those things you can explain away. Other things you just have to try to take away um, the pressure and the pain for it. And there's been a lot of good stuff, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. Some of our past coworkers and leaders did some work on the parallels of dealing with a cyber incident and the grief cycle and how they mirror up. So if someone's interested in that, you should really look into it, and that will help explain what people are really feeling when you're going through these incidents.
What are the sort of conflicting priorities at the start of an incident?
It's normal, right? And it's normal, especially for the first 48 hours, for everything to just be flailing around,
Mhm.
right? And what I offer to people I work with, and what I've offered to people in my past is my schedule is my shield. Right? So in that first 24, 48 hours, I'm trying to set up a meeting cadence. And when I set up a meeting cadence, I tell everybody that this is the cadence that's going to be. And this is how it's going to be. And I explain, right? I don't just
Mhm.
lay out the law and say that these things are how they're going to be. I take the time to explain to executives that I can't keep pulling technical people away to have 10 meetings a day.
Mhm.
One, they have no energy to do what they're supposed to do and no time to do what they're supposed to do.
Mhm.
Two, you're paying a huge crisis rate in dollars
Mhm.
to have these people sit on a meeting and probably say the same thing 4 times a day. So I'm just very open. I'm very straightforward with them. If I need to explain things, I try to do it in a language they understand. Maybe that's dollars, maybe that's time, something will click and I'll be able to get that message across. Um, I make myself available as much as possible to an executive board, or at least to the POC, the main POC of the incident,
Mhm.
so that they can ask me questions. How do I handle that? I'll use things like Teams. I'll use things like Slack, Signal, whatever legal approves or whatever the
Mhm.
company, your client approves, I will use so they can access me. And I make it very clear. that if I don't answer you within 5 minutes, I'm not ignoring you. I will get back to you as soon as I absolutely can. And it's usually pretty fast because I watch that stuff when I say that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, what I really see in a lot of organizations that I work with is this, executives really set these expectations of and have wanting basically an hourly update. But the reality of things is there's, realistically not much that can happen in an hour. If you already have a, let's say, status meeting or update meeting for 15, 20, 30 minutes, basically by the time you're almost done with your update, the next update would be expected by leadership. What are some of the argumentation that you bring up when executives come with these type of expectations, just to make sure that you can follow your own operational tempo?
Sure. That's a great question because it does happen, right? Like if they had their way, you would have a meeting with 10 minutes in between every meeting,
Mm,
8 hours a day. I would say to you that I try to get a list, right? A list of things that need to be done, whether that's forensic collection, whether that's diagrams, documentation, whatever it is. And I express to the leaders that this is what we're doing and that it's not instantaneous, right? That the updates will come when we have this stuff and we've had time to digest it. I sometimes have to lead up, Kuhn, right? And that's I think an important thing to say to everybody is we're being brought on as the experts,
mm,
and it's important for us to be able to lead up and help guide these people, right? Sometimes they don't know how they need to be guided. So you have to figure out what language that takes,
mm.
what sentence a CISO or a CEO needs to hear in order to back off a little bit and relax and know that you're taking care of things and you're going to keep them informed of everything that happens.
What was your biggest win?
The very first incident I had, I was supposed to have all these months of training. It didn't work out, right? I got thrown into my first incident like a month after I started. I showed up at this client. I did my war room speech, right? Hey, if you want to call me anytime. And the CISO said that he was so tense until I showed up. And when I showed up, he knew everything was going to be okay. And that set the pace, Kuhn. For my entire career so far, that set the pace. And that gives me that warm fuzzy that I need when things don't feel like they're going right. I look back and say, I saved this guy's day and made him just feel like everything was going to be okay. And that's what this is all about to me. Um, on the flip side of that, not necessarily the flip side, but alongside that,
Mhm.
um, I feel like I've had a couple incidents go right in the sense that they went really quickly. And I was able to help guide the client, and everything fell in right. And I'll say it was like a medium client, a small medium business client, and they were just having a really bad day just before the July 4th holiday. And we worked through the weekend, and we managed to get them restored in about 4 days. And a couple weeks later, the CISO or the CIO came back to me and said, "You saved our company. Had this gone on any longer, we probably wouldn't be in business." So those kinds of things, hearing that, like to me, it's just a day of work, but the actual hearing the impact on people, hearing the impact on their businesses, really drives me and helps keep me going. And those long days that we were talking about a little bit ago helps get me through those.
Leadership challenges.
Um, I see some of the most complex and the most difficult stuff being that leaders have to face they haven't been paying attention like they thought they were for decades potentially, right? We go into incidents and we see leaders who thought everything was fine and they'll say it was fine, right? Oh, we're doing everything right. But Active Directory is a mess. Maybe they do mergers and acquisitions and they come in all different flavors and they never did anything to standardize. Their networks are flat.
Mhm.
The ESX architecture isn't locked down. It's facing the internet exposed. It's just trying to get them to see that a lot, it's trying to get them to see that a lot of what happened is because they didn't put the work in the front. And it's pretty much some pretty basic stuff that they missed. And conveying that to them in a friendly, not aggressive way,
Mhm.
it gets to be pretty complex. And then them accepting that and then having to figure out how they're going to fix that. during an incident or immediately afterward can sometimes be super challenging for me. Cyber leaders aren't using their business impact analysis to determine where their cyber dollars should go
Mhm.
accurately or proportionately, right? So what we see a lot of times, and this is a pretty common problem in the industry, we see people shotgun blast the word security, right? They don't follow a framework. They don't have documentation on the back end to support it. They just think they're going to put all these little pieces together and hope that it all locks into this really nice puzzle and everything's smooth. And it doesn't happen like that. You need to have the foundations, your documentation. The BIA is super important. If you don't know your business, you don't know how to secure your business. If you don't know what your mainstream of business is or your highest income earner is, how do you know how much of your budget to put towards it? Are you putting a budget, like the majority of your budget, towards a smaller, less important part of your business when you could actually be putting more money to the more important part of your business? People need to think like that. Leaders need to get on board and really start understanding their business and leading up, right? That extreme ownership model, lead up and get that stuff done.
The Incident Commander Toolkit.
That's a great question, Kuhn. And if I were to say my strongest tool, and this is an interview question and how I answer it, my strongest tool is the fact that I know how to go to my toolbox and pick out the tool that's appropriate for the situation.
Mhm.
Um, I would offer to you that if you're a new and upcoming incident commander and you're looking to break into the arena, um, your communication skills, right? You have to learn how to communicate with a wide variety of people. And if you consider the audience of a full-blown ransomware incident, you've got technical people, you've got C-suites, you've got lawyers, you've got insurance companies, you have all these people, and everybody communicates differently, and you have to know how to communicate with them. In some of those cases, when you're doing things right, it's hard. It's hard to know exactly what to say or how to say it. I think what we have to do is start looking at tools that can help aid us, right? And you and I had spoken about this earlier.
Mm.
I think destigmatizing AI is an important piece of our role for the future. I think we should be able to use AI and feel comfortable with the results of a document that it produces after we've checked it. I feel like we shouldn't be afraid to say, yeah, I used AI to write this document, or I did this through AI. It's a big help. And I'm not
Mm.
going to lie, like AI is a huge part of my life. Sometimes I will hammer together an email, with fat crayons, and then I'll send it through AI to have it sharpen it up to just so I don't, so I look good and so I sound better. I think we just have to use those tools, but I think foundationally communication is a really important tool to learn.
Okay. And if I look, coming back to the tool set and, Brian's framework, what is your methodology? How do you keep, as part of your toolkit, everything structured, prioritized? Because priorities obviously will shift very often in major incidents. How do you keep track of all of these different actions? What's your thing? What's your toolkit from that perspective, Brian?
I wish I had something really cool to tell you, Kuhn. Like my toolkit is an erasable notebook that's kind of like a whiteboard. I'm old school. I take notes. So I take copious notes of things, right? I don't let anything slide. I pay attention to detail. And that could potentially speak to something like an AI assistant if you're able to use that on a call,
Mhm.
or some sort of transcript if you're allowed legally to use it on a call. But copious notes, and I'm an over organizer and an overthinker when it comes to things.
Mhm.
So I organize profusely. I have tons and tons of folders that I have. I have tons of versions of documents that I work on. So it's
Mhm.
really just about keeping things as organized the best you can, whether it's through your calendar, project planner, like Teams has the forget what it's called. I think it's called Project or something like that, or
Mhm.
Planner.
Mhm. Planner. Mhm.
Um, Planner is a big thing to use and to just keep things organized.
Okay. And do you use pen and paper, or is it an iPad with a pen? I mean, what's your?
Oh, I literally, I'm going to hold it up, Coon. I'm going to hold it up. It's a rocket book. It looks like a notebook, but its paper it's like an erasable surface, like the dry erase surface,
Mhm.
and you use a special pen and then you can just wipe it off with some water and reuse the whole notebook over and over and over again. That's my secret, buddy. Old school.
What does the so what mean to you? This is really about the art of communication. So when talking to execs or writing reports, how do you actually make sure that you're answering the so what? What is your approach to making these technical insights meaningful to this different type of audience?
So, so Kun, through the incident, I spend a lot of time learning who I'm talking to, right? Some executives want spoken to in a very educated, scholarly type manner. Some want you to speak like you're just sitting somewhere having a beer, hanging out, right? Um, when it comes to report writing, I try to take into consideration what my audience is going to be.
Mm.
If someone wants scholarly type answers, I try to give them as much information as possible.
Mhm.
Why this matters to me is if I just say implement the tiered model of Active Directory, and I don't tell them why, and I don't tell them the benefit, and I don't use a language that they understand, it's useless, right? So when I write a report or I write anything, I try to put as much information about the why in there, and that's different for everybody how they want to receive that. But I always make sure that I put those details in there because it matters, right? And this is one of the reasons, we had spoken earlier about me as a incident recovery operations guy. Um, there's more to it than just dropping facts on people, and you have to be able to bring all those pieces together and show them how they fit in the tapestry of security, right? Each thread is a line, each thread defines something, and all these pieces really matter. So it's super important that we know how to communicate, and we always give them more and just don't assume that they're going to know what we're talking about.
Let's wrap it up.
The number one message that I'd want to deliver to anyone considering in the role, getting into the role or in the role, I would remind you that it's okay to be human. I would ask that you remind your clients that it's okay to be human. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. Don't be afraid of,
Freedom to fail, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to fix your mistake, right? There's nothing wrong with being wrong as long as you fix it. I think, when it comes to tools, I cannot say enough about AI. I've mentioned to you, a couple of times through this conversation about the stigma of AI and how people are afraid to use it. If you're not using AI, you're not working as efficiently as you can. Do you have to use it for everything? No. Is it always right? No. But if it gives you a solid 85%, that's 85% of your time that you saved and you can put to something else. It's great to ask questions. It's great to help you rewrite things. Yes, it makes mistakes. It's great to put your documents together, summarize notes that maybe you typed up through a meeting. Use AI. It will set you apart from everybody right now. And the last thing I'll say, Kuhn, is AI is great for the hard skills, right? Ask it a question about a policy, ask it to fix a document, do something like that. But your soft skills matter. What sets you apart as an incident commander is being human, is feeling empathy towards people, is being there for them in this time of crisis, in this terrible time in their life. You're there for them, not just the technical solution, you are there for them. So focus on learning about yourself, focus on learning how to care about people, bring that to the table, and you'll be the best incident commander that ever was.
If you like the content of this episode, do not hesitate to leave a like, comment, and subscribe and follow the series on the various platforms it is provided on. Please also feel free to suggest any topics of interest that you'd like to see discussed on this series.